The archetype of the shadow represents those hidden dimensions of our personality that remain concealed, ignored, or suppressed within our unconscious mind. Originating from the depth psychology theories of Carl Gustav Jung, the shadow encapsulates every facet of ourselves we deem unacceptable, undesirable, or socially inappropriate. These aspects include traits, emotions, impulses, desires, and even talents that, consciously or unconsciously, we have learned to reject throughout our lives. From early childhood, through parental expectations, societal conditioning, and cultural norms, we begin to develop a clear sense of which behaviors are encouraged and which are met with criticism or rejection. As a result, we gradually learn to separate our personality into acceptable and unacceptable fragments, pushing what is judged as negative or threatening deeply underground into our unconscious, forming what Jung called our shadow. The shadow isn't inherently negative or harmful. It is simply a part of our human wholeness that we have neglected, suppressed, or misunderstood. It often contains qualities such as anger, jealousy, greed, lust, insecurity, and selfishness, but it can also hide our creativity, assertiveness, strength, independence, and personal power, especially if these traits were deemed inappropriate in the environments where we grew up. Thus, the shadow holds immense potential for growth and authenticity, despite being perceived initially as threatening. Because the shadow operates unconsciously, it influences our behaviors subtly but powerfully. Its suppressed energies manifest indirectly, often revealing themselves through projections onto others or through sudden and unexpected emotional reactions. For instance, the traits we reject within ourselves, such as aggression or vulnerability, are projected onto others, causing us to intensely dislike or harshly judge those who display these qualities. Such projection prevents genuine self-awareness and reinforces a distorted self-image, where we see ourselves as separate from those negative qualities, thus inhibiting our emotional and psychological development. Moreover, ignoring or denying the shadow amplifies its strength, causing emotional imbalances, anxiety, dissatisfaction, and internal conflicts. The rejected elements seek expression through subconscious means, often emerging in dreams, fantasies, compulsions, or irrational behaviors. Over time, these internal tensions and unresolved conflicts may affect every aspect of our lives, influencing personal relationships, career choices, and overall well-being. Without conscious integration and understanding, the shadow's hidden contents can lead to significant self-sabotage and emotional turmoil. Recognizing and exploring the shadow archetype is essential for achieving emotional maturity and personal fulfillment. Engaging with this hidden part of our personality involves courageously facing uncomfortable truths about ourselves and understanding their origins. By acknowledging, accepting, and ultimately integrating the shadow, we unlock greater emotional freedom and authenticity, improving our self-awareness, relationships, and sense of wholeness. It requires courage, openness, and compassion toward oneself to genuinely embrace the shadow, transforming perceived weaknesses or darkness into valuable insights and sources of strength. In this way, the shadow archetype ceases to be merely a source of conflict, instead becoming an integral component of our journey toward psychological growth, completeness, and genuine self-understanding. When the shadow archetype remains unconscious and unacknowledged, it begins to assert itself powerfully within our relationships, subtly influencing the way we perceive, interact, and emotionally respond to those around us. Because the shadow holds those aspects of our personality we resist accepting, we inevitably project these undesirable qualities outward onto partners, family members, friends, and colleagues. Projection is a psychological defense mechanism through which we attribute to others the negative or uncomfortable traits we subconsciously reject in ourselves. For instance, someone who has repressed their feelings of insecurity might consistently perceive their partner as overly needy, critical, or emotionally demanding. Similarly, a person unwilling to recognize their latent hostility might continuously accuse their partner of being aggressive, judgmental, or manipulative. This projection distorts reality, leading individuals to react not to their partner's true behavior, but rather to their own unacknowledged feelings and impulses mirrored in the other person. Over time, such unconscious projections create misunderstandings and conflicts that seem inexplicable or disproportionate. These arguments often repeat themselves in familiar patterns, with individuals blaming their partner for feelings and emotions they are unwilling or unable to consciously address within themselves. As these projections grow stronger, relationships become increasingly strained and emotionally draining, marked by frustration, resentment, and mistrust. The partner may feel confused or unfairly judged, often unaware that they are merely a canvas upon which unresolved internal conflicts are being projected. Additionally, the shadow can lead us into harmful relationship dynamics that reinforce negative beliefs we hold about ourselves. For example, someone who subconsciously feels unworthy or undeserving of love may repeatedly enter into relationships with emotionally unavailable or abusive partners. On the surface, they might lament their misfortune or feel victimized without realizing they are unconsciously attracted to these relationships as they confirm deep-seated negative beliefs about their self-worth. In such cases, the shadow exerts a powerful pull, driving individuals to perpetuate unhealthy patterns despite consciously desiring something different. The influence of the shadow in relationships is also evident in our disproportionate emotional reactions. When confronted with criticism, rejection, or emotional vulnerability, individuals who haven't integrated their shadow may respond defensively, aggressively, or withdraw entirely, unknowingly reacting from deep-seated fears and insecurities they haven't yet acknowledged. Partners are left confused, hurt, or alienated, feeling as though their attempts at communication or intimacy consistently trigger irrational responses. Over time, such dynamics erode intimacy and genuine connection, replacing authenticity with superficial interactions driven by unconscious fears and avoidance. Ultimately, the presence of an unintegrated shadow within relationships prevents true emotional intimacy and authentic connection. Instead of engaging honestly and openly with one another, partners interact based on hidden projections, unresolved conflicts, and unspoken fears. By not addressing the shadow, relationships remain fragile and susceptible to conflict and misunderstanding. Recognizing the presence and impact of the shadow is therefore critical for anyone seeking meaningful, healthy, and sustainable relationships. Bringing conscious awareness to these hidden aspects enables deeper self-understanding and emotional maturity, paving the way for authentic interactions and genuine emotional intimacy. The cycle of self-sabotage in relationships emerges directly from our unconscious shadow, shaping patterns of behavior that consistently undermine our own happiness and emotional connection. This destructive cycle typically begins with projection, the unconscious displacement of suppressed feelings, insecurities, or undesirable traits onto our partner. When we project, we attribute our own inner conflicts and negative emotions to the other person, convincing ourselves that these undesirable qualities or behaviors reside in them rather than in us. Such projections can take many forms, including unwarranted jealousy, criticism, blame, suspicion, or resentment. Once projection takes hold, individuals start interpreting their partner's actions and words through a distorted lens. Even innocent behaviors are misread as proof of betrayal, rejection, or inadequacy, causing unnecessary conflict and emotional distress. Over time, these misinterpretations build walls of resentment and mistrust, further alienating partners from one another. The more intense the projection becomes, the more reactive and defensive we grow, creating a perpetual cycle in which perceived threats trigger defensive behaviors that ironically lead to the very outcomes we most fear: distance, conflict, and emotional disconnection. The second phase of this cycle is self-fulfilling prophecy. Once we unconsciously expect negative behavior from our partner, we subtly behave in ways that provoke or confirm the feared outcome. For instance, someone unconsciously afraid of abandonment may become excessively controlling, needy, or emotionally demanding. Ironically, this behavior often pushes the partner away, making abandonment more likely and reinforcing the original fear. In this way, the shadow-induced cycle reinforces itself repeatedly, creating patterns that trap both individuals within frustrating and painful dynamics, despite their conscious desire for closeness and happiness. The third element within the cycle is avoidance. As conflicts and emotional pain intensify, individuals frequently turn to denial, distraction, or emotional withdrawal as coping mechanisms. Avoidance prevents confronting uncomfortable truths about ourselves and further obscures our understanding of how we contribute to the dysfunction in our relationships. It perpetuates ignorance about the root cause of conflicts, the shadow itself, and makes genuine self-awareness and growth extremely challenging. Instead of addressing the underlying internal fears or insecurities causing the projections, individuals may seek superficial solutions, blaming external circumstances or their partner for the dissatisfaction they experience. This avoidance maintains emotional immaturity, hindering personal and relational development. Ultimately, the destructive cycle of projection, self-fulfilling prophecy, and avoidance leads to patterns of repeated relationship failures, emotional isolation, and growing frustration. Individuals caught in this cycle often wonder why they consistently attract certain kinds of partners or repeatedly experience the same types of conflict and emotional distress. Without awareness and acknowledgement of the shadow's role, they remain trapped in repetitive patterns, unable to break free and achieve the intimacy and emotional fulfillment they deeply desire. To interrupt this cycle, individuals must courageously explore their unconscious shadows, examining honestly their own hidden fears, insecurities, and unresolved wounds. Acknowledging the shadow breaks the cycle by disrupting the automatic pattern of projection, self-sabotage, and avoidance. It allows for authentic emotional engagement, genuine communication, and the possibility of meaningful change in how one interacts within relationships. Without conscious confrontation and integration of the shadow, individuals will continue unknowingly sabotaging their own happiness, repeatedly experiencing the painful consequences of unconscious internal conflicts. Integrating the shadow involves actively acknowledging, understanding, and accepting those hidden and repressed parts of ourselves that we often perceive as negative or undesirable. Rather than viewing these traits merely as sources of conflict or discomfort, integration requires us to embrace them as essential aspects of our wholeness and authenticity. The process begins with honest self-reflection, identifying the qualities or emotions that frequently trigger intense emotional responses, resistance, or judgment. It necessitates stepping beyond superficial explanations or rationalizations to recognize that our discomfort often originates from within us rather than solely from the actions of others. Once these shadow aspects are consciously identified, the next stage involves deep exploration and compassionate acceptance. This acceptance doesn't imply resignation or passive tolerance. Instead, it means recognizing the legitimacy of all human emotions and impulses, understanding their origins and realizing they often stem from unmet emotional needs, past wounds, or ingrained fears. For example, feelings of intense jealousy might reflect deeper insecurities, rooted in past experiences of abandonment or rejection. Integrating the shadow requires us to empathize with our own emotional experiences, acknowledging that these reactions, though uncomfortable, are understandable and human. As individuals courageously explore and accept their shadow, a shift in perception occurs. The negative traits once viewed as flaws or weaknesses now become valuable opportunities for growth and self-awareness. Instead of projecting these traits onto partners or blaming others for internal conflicts, individuals learn to take personal responsibility for their emotions and behaviors. This significantly changes relationship dynamics, as partners no longer serve as unwitting targets for unconscious projections. Communication improves as both parties feel safer to express vulnerability without fear of disproportionate emotional reactions. Integrating the shadow also unlocks the potential for deeper intimacy, authenticity, and connection in relationships. When we openly embrace our vulnerabilities and fears, we invite others to do the same. Relationships become spaces for genuine, emotional exchanges, rather than arenas of unconscious power struggles and avoidance tactics. Authenticity flourishes as each partner grows comfortable expressing the entirety of their emotional experience, free from the fear of judgment or rejection. Ultimately, integrating the shadow transforms relationships by breaking patterns of self-sabotage and promoting emotional maturity. It empowers individuals to navigate conflicts constructively, viewing relational challenges as opportunities for deeper self-awareness and mutual growth. By consciously integrating the shadow, individuals create the foundation for genuinely fulfilling relationships based on authenticity, acceptance, and emotional transparency. The journey toward healthy relationships begins with self-awareness and courageous exploration of our unconscious shadows. Recognizing and integrating these hidden dimensions of our personality is a critical step in breaking cycles of self-sabotage, conflict, and emotional detachment. True emotional health in relationships is built on authenticity, transparency, and acceptance, not only of our partner, but, most importantly, of ourselves. When we genuinely confront and accept our shadow, we create space for healthier emotional dynamics characterized by openness, honesty, and mutual understanding. Healthy relationships require individuals to acknowledge personal accountability for their emotional reactions, recognizing when unresolved internal conflicts or insecurities are influencing their perceptions and behaviors. With conscious awareness, partners become capable of distinguishing between authentic emotions and projections arising from suppressed shadow aspects. This enhanced clarity significantly reduces unnecessary conflicts, misunderstandings, and defensiveness, enabling more constructive conversations even when facing disagreements or emotional triggers. Moreover, embracing the shadow fosters vulnerability, a foundational element in creating emotional intimacy. Vulnerability is only achievable when individuals no longer fear exposure of their perceived weaknesses or hidden emotions. By integrating shadow aspects, individuals become more emotionally available and less inclined toward defensive or avoidant behaviors. In turn, this invites deeper trust and security, encouraging partners to reveal their own vulnerabilities and authentic feelings, strengthening the emotional bonds between them. Another benefit of shadow integration within relationships is resilience. Healthy relationships are not free from conflict or emotional discomfort. Rather, they are defined by the way partners navigate these inevitable challenges. With conscious awareness of their shadow, individuals approach relational difficulties constructively, perceiving them as opportunities for further self-discovery and emotional growth. Rather than withdrawing or reacting defensively, partners engage proactively, using conflicts as stepping stones toward greater mutual understanding and deeper connection. Ultimately, relationships built upon shadow integration and emotional authenticity provide a stable foundation for long-term happiness, mutual respect, and fulfillment. Partners develop empathy and compassion for themselves and each other, understanding that flaws, insecurities, and complex emotions are intrinsic to human experience. Rather than seeking perfection or idealized harmony, healthy relationships embrace the richness of emotional complexity. Through continuous exploration of their shadow, partners remain committed to personal and relational growth, nurturing bonds that deepen and evolve over time. Thus, consciously integrating one's shadow becomes the cornerstone for creating sustainable, fulfilling, and emotionally mature relationships.